Hello, this is Captains of Industry, a show that over the next few months will profile leading African and Dubai-based industry leaders. We will get to know the people behind the names, the journeys they have traversed in building their names and businesses, and of course, how they navigated the inevitable challenges and who helped them. We will also ask them about what keeps them awake at night in these COVID times in what must be very challenging business environments all over the world. Today, we speak to the man at the helm of the Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange. He is also at the head of the Dubai Commodities Clearing Corporation, the largest and most diversified derivatives exchange group in the Middle East. Let's thank you for finding time to chat to us about where you've been and what you have done. At the outset, I just wanted to know what a day in the life of a person who runs a stock exchange, a commodities exchange, I mean, the two are pretty similar, must be like. What time do you start work?
Well, thank you, Godfrey, and thank you for the introduction. I'm pleased to be a part of your show. The day, a typical day in this industry is really driven by operational processes. The DGCX, the Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange, as you mentioned, is the largest derivatives exchange in the Middle East, and we open for 17 hours a day. A derivative is just a longer dated contract. It's what we would call a futures contract. So people tend to trade the price of the underlying product at some point in the future, this time next month, this time next year, etc. So a very operational environment. We're open until midnight. So the typical day is driven by those operational issues. I'm pleased to say we have a great team, management team and staff here from many industries, but also many countries, a very diverse mix to the skill set to keep the exchange open and to keep the businesses running. We have both an exchange where the trades are matched, and a clearinghouse where the money flows through. A clearinghouse sits in the middle between the two counterparties and makes sure that the trade and the flow of money is guaranteed.
Yeah, I'd imagine in the olden days it would have been like a madhouse, right? But these days, with all these computers and of course the technology that is overwhelming us everywhere, it would be lots of Zooms and silence, but the money moving through. But when the pandemic hit, I wondered what it must be like in the trading floors of the major exchanges in the world, such as yours.
If you'd asked any exchange leader, and I'm talking stock exchanges, the biggest exchanges in the world, commodities and FX exchanges, if you'd asked any leader how long, for instance, they could have their staff working out of the office remotely, perhaps working through the disaster recovery sites, working off laptops, this sort of thing. Typically, exchanges like DGCX and others, the biggest in the world, would have run exercises for a day, maybe 2 days at most, to see how we could run these operations remotely. Coming into COVID and the need for lockdown, which affected all the industries, we actually had our staff working from home for 2.5 months. I still reflect on that now, that we were running this business where we trade $2 billion a day of value coming through the clearinghouse. That was being taken care of and kept open for our market from laptops in people's bedrooms. And that was exactly what every exchange across the planet was doing. The markets stayed open. And that was very, very clear that needed to happen. It was very clear that the capital markets needed to have the flow of funds. And our members and customers were able to use the typical risk management and hedging tools that we offer in order to continue their day-to-day businesses.
So you didn't crash?
No. It's just, well, I didn't hear that question.
It worked exactly the way you had planned that it should.
Yes, I mean, as I say, a huge sigh of relief when we got everyone back in the office. But no, the systems didn't crash, and actually, in some senses, why would they have done? The data centers are there 24/7, and it's the humans that tend to get in the way sometimes. But the stock markets globally stayed open, and I'm very proud that the DGCX stayed open as well.
Yeah, perhaps for the benefit of people who don't quite understand what the Dubai Exchange does, let's talk about what you do and the kind of products that you trade there.
It's a good question because, as I say, typically people understand trading by one of two mental images. One will be the noise and commotion of people shouting in pits, a very chaotic scene. That's typically referred to as open outcry. And obviously those have largely been replaced now, almost completely replaced with sort of the IT and fintech solutions of our computers over the last sort of 20 or 30 years. And the other aspect that people might understand is trading stocks, cash equities. You might trade a price of a share. The DGCX is different. We don't trade gold. We trade the future price of gold. And we have other products, obviously in the precious metal space, but also currencies, equities, hydrocarbons, and hopefully soon the agricultural products as well. And personally, I think it's much more interesting not to know what the price of the stock is today and then trade and buy and sell that. I'd much rather know what the price of a stock is this time next month, this time next year, because then I can make an investment decision. Our market participants are mainly businesses. It's a B2B wholesale market. And for instance, let's look at gold. If people, the gold merchants here or large jewelry businesses or refiners are looking to import gold, they want to know what the future price is, and they want to know what the future currency rates are in order that they can make their investment decisions in order to keep their businesses afloat, make sure that they can maximize the margins wherever possible. So we talk about these kind of risk management and the hedging tools. If you think the price of gold is going to go down, but you need to have an increase in the stock that's coming in, imported, then you can take out a hedging trade in the futures market. And typically these are the kind of products that banks will offer to businesses on their books. We have banks as clients, and we have large corporates, and we have high frequency traders as well. So we've got a very broad balance of market participants on the exchange.
Yeah, and I'd imagine from all over the world as well.
Very much so, very much so. 20% of our business comes out of Europe. We have membership from about 15 different countries, all within a very secure regulatory framework. We can't offer these products. They are somewhat complex and obviously quite expensive to operate from our point of view. We take a deposit when people trade, what's called a margin, but that's done in a very secure regulatory framework from our regulators here, Europe as far apart as Singapore.
Yeah, my old journalism trainer would have said, Godfrey, you haven't asked about the size and scope. So give me a sense of the range of products that you have trading on the exchange, and also just a sense of the size of volumes that we're talking about here.
Okay, so I'm looking at my screen today, and we've traded 35,000 contracts. That's across a broad range of currencies, but also gold and silver. The hydrocarbon complex of WTI and Brent will be in that mix, as well as some of the equities, the single stock futures that we have on the Indian companies. And as of now, we've traded just shy of $750 million US dollars, with another sort of 10 hours of the day to go.
Absolutely. So does your day end? And I also wanted to add into that question who your competitors are.
Yeah, it's a good question, because I often talk about that the business running for 17 hours a day, 7 a.m. till midnight, but that's not when the lights go off. There are various processes that need to be run for market close, and likewise there's various processes that need to be run for market open. So it's pretty much round the clock. Our next gen of fintech this time next year will truly allow us to go to 24/7 and meet the demands of some of our market participants. And who do we compete with? Well, some of the biggest exchanges in the world. The CME, most commonly known as the NYMEX in the energy space, but also SGX in Singapore, exchange in the Far East, and some of the other European commodities exchanges as well. So an exchange that is competing on very much a global scale.
Yeah, and I know amongst the stock exchanges, for instance, the competition is built around price and speed, and I wonder if that's also your world.
Very much so, very much so. And, you know, I look, and we'll talk about, I guess, you know, our role in the marketplace, but I look at why people trade on the exchange that I'm proud to run. Yes, for sure, it'll be for price or for depth or for service reasons. But indeed, it is, as you say, for latency purposes, for the speed of execution. Our clients are trading on some of the fastest exchanges in the world, and we would miss out on a trade if our exchange wasn't equally as quick as well. So it is far removed from that open outcry, shouting and stripy jackets world that people might recall.
That's a world, of course, that you have seen, because I was looking at your profile here and I see 30 years experience around the global commodities industry. You have been in New York, you have been in all those major financial markets in the world. I wanted to know if it was all about finance as you were growing up. Did you know?
That's an interesting question. My father was a bank manager, so it was very much about finance.
You had no
I rebelled
chance.
somewhat. Yeah, I know the shadow of the father. I rebelled a little bit. My degree was in double engineering, and I felt that was perhaps a little bit more practical. But I soon was drawn to the bright lights of the city.
Sure.
And yeah, I've had a long career now in the financial services space, and it's a career and an industry that I would happily recommend to others as well.
Yeah. Was it always about finance? Did football threaten at all to become maybe a passion, given how much those guys earn? I would imagine some of them earn more than you do. I don't know. I'm assuming.
No, it's a fair assumption. It's a very good assumption. No, I think that, yeah, I mean, coming out as a student in your 20s, you're trying to forge a career. You're trying to sort of probably pay off some student debt. But it's a career that is it's rewarding in many ways, not just financially, but also a lot of my prior companies have been quite entrepreneurial. You know, we've been creating and building new solutions for the good of the market, and I'm really pleased when I look back at some of those achievements and see how well they're doing today.
Yeah, talk to me about that, because I want to understand when the bug for finance beat you away from engineering.
Yeah, that's interesting as well, because as I say, from engineering, it was chemical and biochemical engineering.
Sure.
In 1990, I graduated, and I went to work for British Gas, which was a very large company at the time, exploration, transmission, distribution, retail business. And in the early 90s, the regulator wanted to break open this monopoly and invite competition, and to have a standard transportation and shipping and storage contract, a project that I worked on in 94, 95. But by the mid 90s, they also wanted a small, a bulletin board style of approach, if you like, where these new entrants could trade natural gas with each other on a day-to-day basis. And I created Europe's first spot gas market. And that exchange, the OCM, the on-the-day commodity market, is still very active and setting prices today, and it's setting the settlement and the reference benchmark prices. So that kind of, yeah, that bug, if you like, bit me sort of 5 years after graduation, and what is now nearly 30 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have been all over, as I was saying earlier. I mean, you have been, you joined DGCX in 2018 from the NASDAQ, and you now are venturing into what you guys call us here on the continent, frontier markets. Because you went to Victoria Falls and convinced the Zimbabwean government there was an opportunity to be made in creating the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. Before we talk about that, I want to know the kind of work that you are doing as head of the Dubai Exchange in terms of extending your tentacles on the continent, perhaps in other parts of the world.
Well, and it's a fascinating time to be in this space, because how is a business like this going to grow? Well, it can add more trading participants, it can add more products, and it can add more markets that geographically extending its scope. And that's great, and that's our organic growth, but we're not really in control of a lot of that. The step change in our fortunes will come with, you say frontier markets, I would say more sort of the emerging exchanges. I think for far too long, the African space has been overlooked by the sort of typical providers in this space. And whether you look at US or Europe or Asia, those are saturated and mature markets. I'm very fortunate to run the exchange, but also this clearinghouse where we can offer the clearinghouse and clearing and risk management services to multiple exchanges. And this is drawing attraction and attention from those cash equities exchanges in the Middle East, but also the commodity exchanges in Africa, who are saying, well, we may have a spot market. We want to, the expression is to go down the curve to look at future dated contracts. Yeah. But setting up and maintaining and licensing clearinghouses are a complex and an expensive task. And we've deliberately structured the DGCX group to be able to build a clearinghouse that is modular and flexible in offering these services to other exchanges. So yes, I was in Victoria Falls, one of many that were talking with the government and industry parties to see how we could work together with that new emerging exchange to develop derivatives products for their greater success.
And how is that going?
It's going well. We've gone through a design phase. We're working very closely with the government, but many parties involved, not just the government, but also the regulator. There's a couple of mining trade associations there as well. And we will have, with our new NASDAQ fintech solution, the ability to offer these services in just a little over 12 months.
Yeah, there are many points, many people with question mark. First of all, your choice of Zimbabwe, given the torrid history the country has had in the last few years. And then, of course, there's the African continent itself with its paucity of skills, and also some say you need stable business environments for you to be able to make some of these things work. But clearly you have found different. Is this something that you would look for the rest of the continent? Are there other ideas that you are toying around with?
Yeah, look, there's half a dozen countries and representatives of governments that we're talking to. They're all on different tracks of evolution and of pace. The talks are all sort of continuing in a very productive manner. I see challenge for sure, but I don't see that challenge as being any different from any other country. And I don't necessarily look at the historical or political issues that might have beset previous governments or previous regimes. And we look to the future, because for far too long, the African economy has been overlooked, as I say, by providers of trading solutions. And we have in Dubai a part of the globe which has some very historical, real trade flow and physically strong relationships and links between, yes, East Africa, but also Central Africa, back through to the Middle East and beyond, with Dubai's nature as a sort of a global trading hub. So we're tapping into long-standing relationships, I think, as well in the physical trading space, and are able to sort of bolt on top of those relationships these technical solutions.
Yeah. Now, the hard news journalist in me is thinking, oh, you said you are talking to some African countries potentially about some other projects similar to this, and I'm wondering timeframes, and I'm wondering also which particular countries and perhaps commodities. Because one of the things, and I'll tell you this, one of the things we've been talking about for a very long time on the African continent is the need for commodities exchanges, given the large number of commodities that we produce. I mean, you talk about it, be they precious metals, or perhaps you're talking your industrial metals, whatever you're talking about, soft commodities, we have them, but these prices are made elsewhere. So I am thinking, could you be thinking about Ethiopia? Could you be thinking about perhaps Lagos to put, I don't know, maybe a crude oil market in Nigeria?
Well, who knows? But I think that's...
Who knows?
When we look at those, but you're right, Godfrey, when we look at these commodity markets, I could go to any of those cities or any of the countries that we are talking to, and I could ask the traders, what is the price of gold? what is the price of corn in this country? And I'll ask 20 traders and I'll get 20 different answers, because quite frankly, there isn't a well-run and orderly market. Now, that isn't a criticism. It's just that that's the nature of the trading that's grown up in that industry today. What an exchange does, and I can see it on my screen right now, is it brings price discovery. It tells you what the market price is, the one market price in the industry that everyone can then coalesce around. You have visibility, you have trust, and you have provenance on what are, in a globally regulated and tested systems. Do not underestimate that nature of trust and what it gives you, because once people start to believe in a price, from there can be built many other products as well. So that's really what we're trying to bring here is price discovery. And at a time in my career where I'm trying to develop some sort of legacy, if you like, if I firmly believe, as I do, that Africa has been overlooked as an economy by the financial services space, what can I do about it? And leveraging into the strategic objectives of DGCX and how we've tried to grow our business and help our friends on the continent.
Yeah. How are those conversations, Les? Are they frustrating? Are they challenging? Are they giving you hope that there could be something that could potentially come out of this? I'm trying to gauge whether we could soon see a similar type exchanges to what you've done in Victoria Falls, or perhaps we need to be a little bit patient, because as we know, we're talking 54 geographies here. The rules are totally different in each place.
Very much so, and I remain hugely positive and optimistic, because I think I can see everyone sees the advantages and benefits of these exchanges, and once we get one or two of these solutions in place, we have a proof of concept, and I think there'll be a rush of other solutions as well, because other governments and other providers of exchange solutions in the continent will be able to see what we're trying to do and how we've tried to develop our tools and techniques for the good of the local market. It's great that I'm building something for my clearinghouse and for DGCX and for Dubai, but part of our strategy is to transition and hand over. I don't want to be running these markets forever. It is each African country to take the services, the intellectual property, if you like, that we can offer. We'll help develop that, we'll help train that, we'll help shadow and operate it as a partner. But thereafter, each exchange needs to stand on its own 2 feet, if you like. We'll still be there in the background, providing whatever support we can, but it must be for the good of that market by that local market, because it's only then that you get true acceptance by all the market parties.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to do something that is difficult, that makes people like me relevant, which is to talk about the future, of course. Nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, but I'm going to ask you anyway, what a future exchange might potentially look like. You were talking derivatives at the beginning. I think they were just talking about cattle markets, and here we are today. No more people shouting from balconies or in these pits that you were talking about earlier, but now supercomputers running everything from wherever you may be sitting in the world, and it could be Mauritius.
Yeah, I think you've been looking at my travel history there, Godfrey. But I think when I look to the future, we should reflect on what happened with COVID, because the one thing that I think caught a lot of the financial services market by surprise was the emergence and strength of the retail market. Most notably, if you like, in the crypto space, and Robinhood is one provider. There are many, but it's become a colloquialism now about the Robinhood effect of hundreds, millions of small retail investors can all obviously add up and surpass a group of large trading partners on the exchanges globally. And that retail market, which had typically been overlooked as well, of course, over the last 20, 30 years of growth in this sector, revolutionized how trading was happening during 2020 and the various lockdowns. And I think when I look at the future, I see a huge potential there for our customers who can onboard more retail customers, and for the exchanges and the regulators to see how we can offer services of relevance and of timeliness. Typically, stock markets are only open for a few hours a day, And here we are by this time next year, the DGCX will be able to open 24/7. And that makes it much more relevant and much more accessible to that retail sector.
Yeah, you opened the Pandora's box, so I got to ask you about cryptos and that kind of world as well, and the kind of role that they will play. I mean, opinion is split, obviously, as you would know. There are many who say, I mean, Nuria Rubini is one, that this is a scam, and there are some who are saying, you are laughing at the future right there, Matt.
Well, how long have we had on this interview to talk about crypto? I mean,
I'll give you 2 minutes.
I'll declare a personal interest. I did acquire some crypto, and I sold my Bitcoin. I did that purely as a sort of a learning exercise, and I bought at 9 and I sold at 22. So I'm quite happy with the profit I made. I could have made more, but I could have lost more. So for me, personally speaking now, I see crypto as a form of currency. It has to be traded within a regulatory framework. We don't today offer crypto products. I'd like to be able to offer crypto products, but it's the regulator that must approve them first. I think it would be exciting and very much attractive to that new trader, if you like, that new retail element. But we must await the guidance and the rules from the various governments and the regulators before we can offer, what is basically futures in crypto. This isn't trading the price of, let's say, Bitcoin today.
Yeah.
This is the price of trading Bitcoin in 3 months' time. Now that is quite exciting, but it can also be quite challenging.
Would you look at it though?
Someone's capital flow.
Would you have Bitcoin futures on the Dubai exchange?
No, we don't. I say if we were to launch them, it would have to be subject to regulatory approval, and we are waiting for that as we speak.
Absolutely. Les, thanks very much indeed for your time, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and giving us a look into your crystal ball. Thanks very much indeed. That's Les Mail. He is Chief Executive Officer of both the Dubai Gold and Commodities Exchange and the Dubai Commodities Clearing Corporation, the largest and most diversified derivatives exchange group in the Middle East. You've been watching Captains of Industry. I am hoping that this is a journey that you will enjoy and make it enjoyable as well for those who are participating in it. Until next time, goodbye.